Winning has a price. And leadership has a price. So I pulled people along when they didn't want to be pulled. I challenge people when they don't want to be challenged. And I earned that right because my teammates came after me. They didn't endure all the things that I endured. Michael Jordan was down in pain. Michael Jordan.
You ready to make history? Come on now. Yeah. You know, there's these two words. And when I say them, people get goosebumps because they know what happens next. So without further ado,
free smoke.
Look, scared cause I'm drowning in silence with bad thoughts. These days I don't have nothing to say, man, the bag talks. I put in headphones on my driver, pull up to the spot and give a good dick and Godiva. I can't lie, I'm uninspired. No more pillow talking about nonsense. I only stick around to put some band-aids on my conscience.
I just want to start this show off by saying I hate the Philadelphia Phillies with every fucking thing in my heart, bro. I hate this fucking baseball team. Now that I'm done with that, how the fuck are we doing? Game 7. Boston got it done. Boston got it done, man. Congratulations. Well, I'm not congratulating the Boston Celtics, bro. That's just not going to happen, bro. The Laker in me is just not going to allow that to happen, bro. It's not going to allow that to happen. But, yo, shout out Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. Yo, fuck. I should have just... Okay, listen. I hope the alert come through while I'm recording. I should have waited to see who won the... I'm pretty sure they're going to give it to Jason Tatum. It should go to Jaylen Brown, in my opinion, but they're probably going to give it to Jason Tatum, which I'm not going to be mad at. Because Jason Tatum... Like, I fuck with Jason Tatum heavy. So I'm not mad at them for continuing to push the Jason Tatum narrative by giving him something like this. Because in all honesty, it wasn't that big of a, you know what I'm saying? It ain't like Jaylen Brown should have got it and it's like no shot he should be losing that award. Like, it's not like that. And plus, Jason Tatum hit some clutch shots down the stretch of this game. And even though I don't think he or Jaylen Brown still were as aggressive as you want them to be in the fourth quarter, because Marcus Smart and others took that role for him. And listen, I know how much I talk about the role players being good for Golden State. I'm not going at the role players for Boston for being good. But Boston's losses in this series is because the role players haven't been really that good. Or because the role players have been good and Tatum and Jaylen Brown still haven't been good along with those role players. And even in this game, it was stretches where Jaylen Brown and Tatum was both in the action at the same time playing good together. But for the most part, this still was one of those games where your turn, my turn type of thing. You know what I'm saying? Even Marcus Smart. Now, I'll get into that in a second. But I think a huge part of the reason why the Celtics won this game tonight was because of Marcus Smart. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But the Laker in me will not allow me to, you know, congratulate them. But I will congratulate, like I said, Tatum, Brown, Horford. Al Horford, I saw a stat that said he had played like the most games, playoff games in NBA history without making a finals appearance. So he finally gets to take his, he finally get a shot in the finals. So shout out to Al Horford. Respect to that man because he is a Hall of Famer. And if he ain't a Hall of Famer, at least he a Hall of Famer in Boston. So shout out to Ime Udoka, because it took him 1 year to do what Brad Stevens could never do. How I remember how everybody in the media continuously crowned this dude the golden child, basically. Oh, Brad Stevens. And then finally, it was like a group of people in the media who was like, I'm gonna be honest, man, Brad Stevens straight, but he ain't special, man. Like, y'all making a lot of excuses, and this man is not that special. It's no coincidence he steps up to the front office. Ime Udoka comes in, and the Celtics find a way to get to the finals. I'm not taking nothing away from Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens was a good head coach. Brad Stevens was not a great head coach the way people crowned him. Brad Stevens had a couple flaws that people never wanted to really talk about until he was in the front office, or until that last season towards the tail end, when people started to realize this team is underachieving. Now, as much as I like Ime Udoka, I think he is a great coach. Great coaches find ways to get their teams to the finals. I still think his offense can be even better with Boston. But with that being said, we're gonna talk about the losers first. Nah, I don't know who we're gonna talk about first. We'll just talk about everything. We're mixing in a little bit. But when it comes to Miami, one of the biggest reasons Miami lost this game, aside from the factors that Boston presented, was the fact, and Jimmy Butler played every single minute of this game, and even though he did play every minute of this game, it didn't feel like it towards the fourth quarter, because it just felt like they didn't get him the ball enough. Like his play, it felt like a lot of plays in the fourth quarter was him resting and stuff like that towards the late end of the third and the fourth quarter, where I feel like if they knew he was playing every minute of this game, they should have allowed him to have those type of rests in the beginning of the game. But it couldn't happen because they played from behind the entirety of this game. Like the entirety of this game, Miami played from behind. And Miami is an interesting team, bro, because it's hard to judge which one of these two teams is bad, good, or what, you know what I'm saying? Because it's like, yeah, it was blowouts in this series, but Miami blew them out just like Boston blew them out. Then in the close games, Miami won the close games. Boston won a close game. So it's like, and it went to a game 7. It's not like Boston even dominated these dudes. So that's what made me say to myself, even though I'm critical of a lot of things on Miami, something gotta be good. Like, I think Jimmy Butler is obviously a phenomenal player, great leader. He is a superstar, and I love Eric Spoelstra as a head coach. He is a great head coach. Bam Adebayo showed up tonight, even though I still think he wasn't aggressive in areas. See, when I say Bam had a lot of wasted possessions, bad possessions, and meaningless buckets in this game. Now, you're going to say, well, he scored as many points as he scored in any game this series aside from that one game. And what I would say to you is, yeah, he did. But a lot of his buckets came when they was down in the game, and they didn't really influence runs or change anything for him. Those buckets came from Jimmy Buckets and Kyle Lowry, and even Max Strus. Those buckets didn't usually come from Bam. Needing Bam to be aggressive isn't just getting the easy buckets where you can get them. Because even though he wasn't getting easy buckets where he could get those throughout the majority of the series, still, yes, I need you to get those buckets. But that's not something you should have to explain to great players. You should know we need you to get these easy buckets. The buckets that I'm talking about is when Jimmy Butler need his break, when he done went off on a 18-point second quarter. Now in the third quarter, I need Bam to do all the scoring. I need Bam to be ultra aggressive. And in those easy buckets that you're talking about, I need him to get those easy buckets when Jimmy Butler is going for 18 in the second. Because there is easy opportunities to be had when Jimmy Butler is going off like that in the second quarter. If Jimmy Butler can give me 18 in the second quarter, I expect Bam to give me at least 8 points in that quarter also. Because then that will make a defense work. That will make it so that they can't just zone in on one player. And truly, the great duos, if one dude is giving you 18 in the quarter, a lot of those great duos, the other dude is probably going to give you 10 points in that quarter. The great ones will give you even more than that. But the way they are playing off of each other, not just playing with each other, but everything, like the movement together, the way they find each other buckets. It's not just, okay, you just go, I'm going to just find a feet. No, they know how to get each other going at the same time. And that, to me, is what changes the game for a lot of those teams with the great duos, because they know how to play seamlessly together. They're not playing one-on-one, basically, or your turn, my turn type of ball. Because, yeah, that worked for so long. And Boston is an interesting team because I do think they do that sometimes, but they don't do that as much as they do. If Jason Tatum going off, Jaylen Brown usually just turn into a role player. Like, it's not even like they do a your turn, my turn truly all the time. It's more times than not, it's like Jason Tatum become the entirety of the team. And everybody start to just roll off of him. Jaylen Brown don't try to become the second best player. He just fit into a role. And then when Jaylen Brown going off, Jason Tatum become a role player. And even though they talk about both dudes as if like, okay, we know the stature that they talk about him at, the reality is a lot of times when Jaylen Brown going off, just like I said about Tatum, Tatum just become a role player. And, you know, if he decide to get his, he get it. But usually they just going to keep feeding Brown, and it's going to become the team is centering around him. It's not going to become them seamlessly playing off each other and one dude getting hot is helping the other get easier buckets. That's usually not happening with the Celtics. Another thing that I thought helped the Celtics in this series a lot, seeing is how because they don't play like that, like the seamless way of how they could easily get each other buckets off of playing good, because they play the opposite of that, basically how I was describing. I think the thing that helped them because of, you know, that is the fouls. That can slow down the games, that can halt runs, that can kill a team trying to come back. If you're a team trying to come back, yeah, you stopping the clock, but you stopping the clock and giving them more buckets, like more points. So when the clock start back up, you still losing, but you losing by more points now. And God forbid it's one of those flagrant shits where they getting like 3 points at the line or get the ball back. God forbid it's one of them things. But I just think Boston's ability to get fouled, because I do think I talked about how I really wasn't a fan of the officiating throughout this series. This final game was such a interesting so I felt like Boston and both teams got calls, but it was just so weird how at the end of the game they swallowed their whistles for Miami, because it felt like Miami started to get fouled and finishes. It should have been a lot of and ones towards the end of the game, but it didn't feel like the refs was willing to call those no more. It felt like they was doing the flop. Oh, they might be flopping. But they didn't do that the opposite way for the Celtics. So that was weird to me. But the officiating to me was janky throughout the entire series. I thought they favored Boston a lot, but that's neither here nor there. Miami didn't lose the series because of the officiating. A thing that happened in this game with Miami is something that, and it's so weird how Miami even got back into this game at the end with like 50-something seconds left off of Boston just letting that youthful exuberance show again, just not knowing how to close out games. But Miami went through a drought towards the like 3-4 minute mark in this game of the fourth quarter where they missed like 9 shots in a row. And it's like I said, Miami picked the absolute worst times to start going on these scoreless droughts where they just cannot buy a bucket, can't get to the free throw line. And naturally, when you play against a team like Boston or any team that's considered to be a great defensive team, that team usually will get away with more calls than the average team. So I understand that to an extent, being given the benefit of the doubt when you known as a defensive team. But Miami, like, to me, they just not they wasn't consistent enough in trying to get certain scores. They wasn't looking for certain ways to score it. To me, it was just like hoping somebody got open, hoping somebody got a bucket, hoping Jimmy Butler could take them home. And when that turned into that and you don't have a legitimate way to score, for example, Boston knows we could probably get either a bucket or a foul if we continuously drive when we have a guard on us. If Strauss is on us, drive. We either going to get a bucket or a foul. If Kyle Lowry on us, drive. We getting a bucket or a foul. If now the Kyle Lowry one is shaky because he could lead you to a charge. He could get a strip here or there. But for the most part, because they have bigger size guards or their main players are bigger guys like Smart, Brown, Tatum, the goal for them on offense was to drive, you will more than likely get a foul or a point. And even then, if you don't get neither one of them, you can kick it out because of that penetration and the defense collapsing on you. Somebody going to be open. A lot of times in this fourth quarter, Boston had somebody standing wide open in the corner because of Miami's defense kept collapsing when Jason Tatum or somebody kicked. And Al Horford missed a shit ton of three-pointers in this game. If Al Horford had to hit the majority of them threes that he had that was wide open, Boston probably win this game by an even bigger margin. Boston's consistent ability to kind of like play down in the fourth quarter in some of these games and really rely heavily on the other team breaking down more so than them taking over. It's kind of weird to me because if they took over in these fourth quarters rather than relying on Miami to play bad, I think Boston probably would have won this series quicker. But because they more so rely on Miami to go through shooting droughts, Miami to turn the ball over a lot, Miami to not be able to score, which is the same thing as a shooting drought. But sometimes it's not even the shooting droughts. It's just they know Miami not going to be able to hit shots because they can't get past the defense or whatever. The fact they can rely on these stretches where they know the refs are going to blow the whistle for them. Like, I don't think that's good habits to have. But, you know, it got them through this series. Now, one of the biggest reasons I think that they was able to win this game tonight, even with how sloppy they got at the end of this game, was Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart not taking so many unnecessary bailout threes for the Miami Heat is a huge reason they won. So if you go back to Game 6, Marcus Smart took like 6, 7, 8 shots, three-pointers, and missed damn near every three-pointer he took on the night except for one where he had got fouled on it. That is not good offense. Like I said in the previous video, every time you allow Marcus Smart to take those bad three-pointers, you're taking shots out of Jaylen Brown's hand, you're taking shots out of Tatum's hand. And I understand Marcus Smart is your third best player, but Marcus Smart is not a scorer. Yes, it is great if Marcus Smart can go off in a game and give you 20-plus points in a game. If he can have a game where he hit a lot of threes. But it's usually quick to tell when that's going to be the case for Marcus Smart. And I'm not saying don't allow this dude to try to score because you don't want him at the end of the game to be cold and to have not been able to score the whole game and then try to take a shot and just be cold. That, you know what I'm saying? Out of rhythm or whatever. I'm not saying that either. But you have your two clear scores. Marcus Smart taking 6, 7, 8 threes. That's especially when he's not a high percentage three-point shooter or a high volume three-point shooter or a dude that's known to get hot from downtown. Like that's taking away, that's lowering your percentages to win a game. And at the very least, it's lowering your percentages to score on that possession, which is just giving away possessions. One of the problems Miami had in this game is every time they would make runs, like towards the end of the third quarter was a very bad end of the third quarter to me for Miami because they just gave away. They had a decent end, but they had wasted possessions. Victor Oladipo giving away a possession by just launching a bad three-point shot. Like, bro, you should not be worried about a 2-for-1 opportunity right now, bro. This is not a seasonal game right now. This is Game 7. You need to be trying to get a easy, legit bucket, a legit look. You should not be trying to get a 2-for-1 right now. That is a bad decision in a Game 7 when you are down. To follow it up, Kyle Lowry gets a offensive charge for you, which Kyle Lowry had a lot of big plays in this game. But Kyle Lowry get the turnover for you so Boston can't end the quarter with a shot. And instead of Jimmy Butler, who is the hot hand, you want him to get the ball. Instead, he take the ball out, pass it to Lowry, and basically just walk down the court to let the quarter in and let them do whatever they need to do. You can't do that. I understand Jimmy Butler been playing every single minute of this game. I get that. But we are losing. It is Game 7. You cannot just say, oh, we got a whole fourth quarter to get this right, because you don't know how the fourth quarter going to go. You have to take advantage of every single possession you have. And I don't think Miami in the end of that third quarter, those last two possessions specifically, utilized two possessions in which Boston did not score. You get 2 buckets right there, and you right back into this game. It could have been at the least a 4 or 5 point game. And so many times Miami would get this game down to around 7 to 6 points. And they would always begin to start wasting and giving away possessions by doing stupid shit. Either they wouldn't be able to score or they turn the ball over. Or they foul and give and on the next play they end up fouling or something. And I'm like, yo, this is just not valuing possessions enough, especially in a game 7 where you are losing and you're at home. And I do want to say something real fast. The Miami crowd really didn't make a difference in my opinion. Like, to me, they didn't get as loud as Boston's crowd was in game 6. Like, I was looking at the in game 6 Boston crowd, it was moments where it was so fucking loud I had to turn my TV down. I never felt that at no point in time in this game for Miami's crowd. So, yeah, Miami is an interesting basketball town. But the wasted possessions by Miami and towards the end of this game, to me, when you're losing, it just didn't make any sense to me. But for getting back to Boston and Marcus Smart, because he did not take so many bad threes and unnecessary threes and threes that basically bailed out Miami, that changed the game. Instead of taking those threes tonight, he penetrate and kick. He penetrate and get a floater. He penetrate and get the foul. Or drive and get the foul. He drive and get a floater. Penetrate to kick out and get somebody else a look. It was a lot of dudes who missed shots off of his penetration and kick outs. But he was far more valuable tonight and what he decided to do with those possessions, opposed to what Miami decided to do with certain key possessions. Because you could make an argument that a lot of Marcus Smart's possessions tonight were key possessions late in this game. And if not for him deciding, I'm not going to bail Miami out with 3-pointers, I'm going to penetrate, I'm going to drive and handle it from there, this could have been a completely different game for them also. And like I said, if Al Horford hit a lot of these 3-pointers that he missed tonight, completely different game. Now, as good as people keep telling me Miami's defense was, Miami continuously gave up this side corner 3 that was missed. They gave it up from both corners where they leave somebody wide open in the corner. Like I said, a lot of misses from downtown from those threes. Like Derek White started off the game pretty hot, but he wasn't able to carry it on. One of Boston's biggest problems, and maybe Miami's defense, I'm not giving them enough credit because Boston, but I don't know if it's Boston. I feel like it's Boston more so it is Miami, because Boston had these times in games, because they had him against Milwaukee and they had him in this series right here, where it feel like they go either a quarter or a very long period of time where they just play very sloppy, inefficient basketball. And the refs aren't giving them fouls during that moment, so you can really tell how bad it is. Usually throughout the duration of the game, they getting their fouls for those type plays and whatnot. So it looked like, okay, they just being fouled. But then they start to do it, and they had these long droughts, right? And it's like, okay, well, they doing a lot of flopping right now, doing a lot of bad, inefficient shooting right now. They cannot get a shot inside, even though they keep driving, they missing. Boston have a lot of those droughts, because even though I think Boston is a good team as far as like finding a way, even though a lot of these games been low scoring to me, Boston to me is not a great 3-point shooting team. Like, they done hit threes because I think Miami done left them open on a lot of threes with bad switching, bad transition defense. Like, Miami gave away a lot of points early in this game, especially because Miami's defense was atrocious early in this game. The counter was, and I give it to Bam. Bam actually hit some buckets in that third quarter that kept them in the game. In the third quarter, Bam had a good third quarter that kept them in the game, because they could not break that 9 to 6 point lead, 6 to 9 point lead, and Bam kept hitting buckets that was keeping them in the game. So I will give him that. I give Bam that. I'm not trying to overshadow anything good Bam did. But if he was more consistent with that throughout the series, this could have been a different series. You could look at both teams and say if this or that had happened, it could have been a different series. Like, if Jason Tatum is more aggressive throughout the losses in this series. Because I think every single loss for Jason Tatum, you can point to shit like not aggressive in the second half, not aggressive in the fourth quarter, not taking enough shots, not seeking out his shots, turning the ball over too much. Like, those are the things that you could legitimately make arguments about throughout the series for Jason Tatum. Which to me, he the best player on the team. He the leader of he the best player on the team. I don't know if he the vocal leader, but he the leader of the team because that's how we look at him. You just got it. That can't be the problem. You know what I'm saying? I don't care if you missing shots or none of that, but we can't have him not taking shots. We can't have him, caring about. If your best player cannot care about their shooting percentage, they cannot care about their field goal percentage, bro. It cannot happen. If you have a superstar player that care about that, then you will not win the way you think or feel like you should win. I'm just telling you that right now. If Kobe cared about shooting percentages, he would not be a 5-time champion. I'm just telling you right now. So I like seeing Jason Tatum more aggressive. As he the best player on the team, you don't want to be able to say, oh man, he just wasn't aggressive enough. Especially, he wasn't aggressive enough in the fourth quarter when it mattered. I thought even though it was a swing in and out of aggressiveness tonight, for the most part, he did his job down the stretch, especially with two big buckets, a three-pointer and a one-on-one with Jimmy with like 2.5 seconds on the clock, and he got a beautiful move on Jimmy to get an open look. Like, so he hit big buckets down the stretch of this game. The clutch free throw demons continuously come back to haunt Jaylen Brown, and he gonna have to fix that that free throw demon when it comes to clutch free throws. But what I will say is Boston's defense, to me, Boston's defense can keep them in games. But I think the thing is, what you saw throughout this series was two things. Boston's defense can keep them in games, and it can sustain them a lead. However, that in this series, it came against a team that was offensively challenged. So if Boston can get up on you because they go on a a seeker or a hot streak where they just hitting a lot of shots and let's say they build up a 19-point lead or something like that. Their defense is good enough to maintain that lead throughout the majority of the game if they get that lead early. Especially if they're playing against a team like Miami, who is offensively challenged. However, they cannot have games where their defense is off and on. Both of their two best players is struggling, and the opposing team's best player is on one, because that's when things can get iffy. Now, saying that, it's still a possibility they could win a game like that because that's just one dude. So they could play good enough because of how good their defense could get, and because of how good their defense is, it could keep them hanging around long enough to where if they just get it together and make some plays down the stretch, they can win the game. And I understand that about Boston, that the defense is really what you build everything off of, and what's really what's the word I'm looking for? It's really what's the fucking word I'm looking for? I really can't think of the word I'm looking for. I understand Boston's defense, though. That's the I thought I was gonna say that sentence and get the word back, and then the mental block that I just ran into so fucking hard, bro, was hard enough to break a nose or something, bro. You don't even understand how blank I went when I finished that sentence, or when I got to that pause in the sentence, bro. I slammed against that mental wall so hard just now, trying to thinking that word was just gonna pop out. But when your defense is basically the cornerstone of your team, that's what everything is built around. It's the nucleus of the team, basically. That's what everything is built around, is the defense. I understand you can do things like this. However, I think it's going to be a little bit different, because you really praying that Golden State struggle shooting. Not just Curry. You're praying that Curry, Clay, Poole, and all the others, Wiggins, and all the others are struggling to shoot this series like Miami. Because Miami's team struggled to shoot for the majority of this series. Like, for the majority of this series, Miami struggled shooting. And yes, I understand how good Boston's defense was. But Miami missed a lot of open shots in this series, too. Miami missed easy shots at the rim in this series. Plus, Miami lost 2 home games. The Warriors haven't lost a home game in the playoffs yet. Now, I'm not saying that the Warriors can't lose a home game in the playoffs. I'm just telling you it hasn't happened yet. And so when I'm basing this, I just think if Boston played the way they played in this series against the Warriors, that's not going to be a 7-game series. That's going to be a 5 or 6-game series. I truly believe if they play like this, that's going to be a 5-game series, because if Jaylen Brown, who I still do not believe is a good scorer or shooter, and I hate how very obvious that is when I watch him play, because I know he can get off on a heater at times, but I just know after that heater die down, I know it's going to be an off and on type of thing. He's going to miss a lot of them more than he make after that point. So even though I think his aggressiveness is really what carried him through, but let's say you have so many of these games in which Jason Tatum is struggling to score sometimes, which I kind of think Jason Tatum might face his toughest challenge of this series or the playoffs defensively. Here why. I don't think the Warriors really should worry too. I think you should allow Jaylen Brown to beat you. I think they should go into this series and say, make Jaylen Brown and the others beat us, just not Jason Tatum. And if that's the Warriors' game plan, I think they'll win. Because, like I said, unless Jaylen Brown would have to become what LeBron James was against the Spurs when the Spurs said, we just going to let LeBron shoot. And LeBron said, fuck it, I'm going to kill you then. Now, he still needed Ray Allen at the end of that game to hit that shot, but nonetheless, he hit a lot of shots in that game. And if you bank on Jaylen Brown, obviously you don't want it to happen. You would make an adjustment if he get hot in this series, just torching you. And I'm not saying you wouldn't be playing no defense on him, but I just feel like Jaylen Brown is the dude who you could probably be more lenient on defensively. You just have to stop him from being able to drive. If you can cut off Jaylen Brown's driving ability, and don't even let him get those driving abilities and free throws to get hot or to get into a rhythm, I think it'll be a far rougher series for him. Jason Tatum is a better shooter and scorer than Jaylen Brown. And right now, I don't think Jason Tatum is a shooter. I think Jason Tatum is a scorer. Even though he has shot the three-pointer a lot better to me this year than he have in past years, and his form is a lot better this year than it was in past years to me, I'm still not the biggest fan of Jason Tatum's form, because I feel like it's a fadeaway all the time, but I don't know. But I still think, even though he isn't a shooter, I think he's more of a scorer. I think because he is the best player on the team, and I do think he still rely more so on. I don't think Jason Tatum rely on free throws all the time. I think he can have a very efficient game without the free throws, but he can have a game where he rely heavily on free throws. So it's multiple ways you would have to defend him. He could just have a game where he just killing you outside, inside, because he is a very great offensive scorer, in my opinion. He can kill you in multiple ways. He don't just have to go on a heater, which is why it's weird to me that he lack aggressiveness in these clutch moments in fourth quarters and second half of these games at times, because he not a player that need to go on a heater. He a player that if he go on a heater, then now we got a problem, because this dude can shoot from outside, mid-range. He can back you down. He can get inside. He can get the fouls and hit his free throws. If this motherfucker get on a heater, now we got a problem. But he not one of them, because he not one of them dudes who he a one-dimensional type of dude. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's I'm pretty sure Andrew Wiggins will start off on him, and he'll get the Luka treatment. And he, to me, a better shooter than Luka is, so but I don't think he's more aggressive than Luka, and that's what could end up killing them in this. If Boston lacked aggressiveness in games like they did against the Heat, they are in trouble, because the one thing that kept Boston, the one thing that gave Dallas, because the one thing they have over Dallas is defense. Their defense is far better than Dallas's defense. They don't have to worry about Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown pulling the Luka Doncic on defense. I get that. That is a huge advantage when you are Boston. However, offensively, the teams are not that much different offensively. Whereas Luka is the driving force for them, Jason Tatum is the driving force for them. Or in games, sometimes it'll be Jaylen Brown that's the driving force. But it's never really a two-man strong game. Even I would say at times Dallas played to the same level of a two-man game. Because it was times where Luka wasn't really going off at the same time as Jalen Brunson and them boys. Like Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie had games where they played off of each other very nicely. It rarely happened, but when it did, that was more so. But to me, the Mavs are a better shooting team, or a more. To me, when I look at the Mavs and I look at the Mavs aren't a better team than the Celtics. But the one thing I think they do better than the Celtics is shoot threes. Now, I could be completely wrong if you go look at the stats. But I just feel like when you play the Mavs, to me, that three-pointer is a far bigger threat when you play them than Boston. And that's not saying that Boston can't shoot. I just fear the dudes that they have on the floor who can shoot that three-pointer more so than Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Al Horford, Grant Williams. You know what I'm saying? Whereas you got Dallas who putting out Spencer Dinwiddie, Luka, Brunson. You know what I'm saying? Max Keebler, who is a shooter. There's so many dudes they putting on the floor that can all shoot three-pointers. I think Dallas's entire starting five can shoot threes. So the threat of leaving one of them dudes open at all times, you just want to get home at the three-pointer so much more against Dallas. Where I think the defense that they play against Boston will be a little bit different, because Boston is a team that's going to try for the most part to attack you inside. Yeah, they can shoot. They'll be able to get three-pointers here and there. But I don't think that the three-pointer is the biggest threat for Boston like it was for Dallas. I think the biggest threat for for Boston coming into this series in this finals against the Warriors is getting inside. And that's where you're going to have Kevon Looney play great, be able to defend without fouling. That's where you're going to need Draymond to be able to play great, defend without fouling. Andrew Wiggins going to have to play great and defend without fouling. And they already had a test like this, basically, playing against a player who draws a lot of fouls. Because they just played against Luka, and Luka draws a lot of fouls. The free throw discrepancy between Luka and anybody else in that series was ridiculous. And that is kind of a fear to me anytime I see a team go into a game or a series that rely so heavily on free throws at times, especially when they best player. That's why I'm not saying Jason Tatum rely heavily on free throws, but in this series against Miami, Boston lived at the free throw line. Like, it's no two ways around it. Boston lived at the free throw line, and I don't know if you live at the free throw line against the Warriors, but we shall see. That's one of them things that's just unpredictable. I can't predict if the refs are going to call the series the same they called it when they played against Miami. So I don't know how that'll go, because it's like you look at a dude like James Harden who live off of free throws, and when he get to the playoffs, they don't allow him to live off of free throws. And so you never know. But to me, if you say both teams playing at their best, I still think the Warriors are the better team. I like Boston's defense. My only concern, I don't think Miami's offense was complex enough for Boston's defense. A true test of how great Boston's defense will truly be when they play against Golden State. Because it's easy to continuously play those two centers the way you play them by having them play so deep to be able to get you when you penetrate or try to drive if you Miami. That's different when you're playing against a Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, Steph Curry. Steph, Klay, I don't know why I acted like I messed that up. I said exactly what I was trying to say. But Steph, Klay, and Poole, those are dudes who, they can drive. But those ain't dudes who you can play that off of, especially coming off of screens and stuff. You get those two dudes spaced with the centers, playing that far off of them, they taking that shot. They're not going to stand there continuously looking to pass the ball like Bam Adebayo was doing. They're not going to be passing up the three-pointers that P.J. Tucker was passing up. They're not going to be launching bad three-pointers like, what's my man name? Strauss and Vincent was launching. They definitely won't have I almost guarantee the amount of three-pointers that was blocked in this series by Boston will not happen in this next series against the Warriors. Because the Warriors' ability, their offense, to me, just will not allow Boston to just sit down in their defensive stances and be able to just switch easily and not have to worry about that threat of, like, because let's be honest, they not worried about Jimmy Butler lighting their asses up for three. Because they're not worried about Jimmy Butler trying to attack a three-pointer, their defense can play so congested inside. That's why it was so wild that they didn't get called for as many fouls as I thought they was going to get called for sometimes throughout these games. Because they defense, and that's why you saw a lot of Robert Williams running out to the three-pointers to take to block threes. But he was never already out there. That's going to hurt you against the Warriors. And so, plus, the calls that that the Heat were not getting against the Celtics, I just have a hard time believing that they won't get, like, I'm not saying Boston still won't get the series called heavily for them or get a lot of calls in the series, but I am saying I don't see the Warriors not getting calls also, in my opinion. But as good as Boston's defense is, I just think this will be the ultimate test for them. Because like I said, you're not worried about, you can play Max Strauss a certain type of way. Until he heat up, you can play him a certain type of way. You can play Kyle Lowry a certain type of way. You continue to, you don't have to, they truly don't have to fight around screens or do anything special when they trying to switch on defense, because they're not scared of the threat of the three-pointer from a lot of these dudes on Miami. Bam Adebayo and P.J. Tucker are two dudes that's on the floor that don't even provide a scoring threat most throughout the majority of this series. But then you take a step further. Almost all four dudes aside from Jimmy Butler. So it's five dudes on the court. Most of this series, four of the dudes on the court provided no scoring threat to Boston. When that's the case, you can play defense a certain type of way because the ref's not giving them calls. They can't draw up anything good. They continuously go through these long droughts of not being able to score. I just think that'll be very rare for the Warriors to have multiple games where they go through 5, 6, 7 minute droughts, a whole quarter where they just cannot find a way to score. You can say that happened to the Warriors on your hand. You could probably count that on one hand how many times that happened throughout the playoffs this year. That's happened almost every game for Miami. That happened literally almost every single game for Miami in this series, where you could point to different times where they just had these terrible stretches where they could not score, could not buy a bucket, couldn't find ways to get easy looks. I just don't think you're going to get that. Not to mention, when you look at Miami, you got a guy in Strauss and Vincent who you do not fear as far as the drive. Andrew Wiggins is a far better driver getting to the bucket than either of those two. Jordan Poole is a better finisher and he's better at getting to the bucket than any of those two. Steph is better than any of those two. Clay is better than either of those two. And the Warriors' offense will make it easier for others to be able to do things that Miami's offense just did not allow them to do, or to take advantage of things that Miami's offense could not take advantage of because of how poorly they shot the ball and how one of the things that is interesting that will translate for Boston is how you play on turnovers. If you can play good basketball off of turnovers, you will have a chance to beat the Warriors, because the Warriors turn the fucking ball over. I think they averaged like 16 turnovers in the playoffs this year. The Warriors are going to turn the ball over. If Boston can capitalize off of turnovers, they will be in every single one of these games, and they will have a chance to win these games. That's when you're going to need Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to be big down the stretch. And one of my biggest things for Boston that I fear could make them, it could make this series shorter than Boston projects or predicts that it would be, is if this is true. I just don't see a two-man game, but truly a one-man game being able to beat the Warriors. I can see you taking 1 or 2 games because of the defense, but I don't even think that defense. I think you're going to see the holes in Boston's defense in the finals. I think the Warriors are going to show you all the holes that Boston's defense truly has, that the Eastern Conference teams could not expose. Because as good as they were shooting in the season, some of these teams, the shooters on those teams are nowhere near the shooters that are on Golden State. The coaches are not Steve Kerr. The offenses are not the Warriors' offense. And those teams had a Giannis Antetokounmpo and they had a Jimmy Butler. They don't have what the Warriors have. And so I think Boston's greatest test will be the Warriors' offense. Now, some people are going to say that the Miami Heat's defense was the best defense that Boston saw. I disagree. I think Boston's the best defense they are going to see was probably Milwaukee's if they had Middleton. But I think the best defense they're going to see is Golden State's defense, and this is why. Like I said, Golden State is going to be the best shooting and scoring team because Golden State the best scoring team. They lead the playoffs in scoring, team scoring. Just off the simple fact Golden State puts pressure on you because of how good they can score the ball and how many points they can score and how many in bunches. The defense can play certain type of ways. And you might feel like you have to rush shots or have to hurry up and try to get up shots or cut leads and shit. So because of how good the Warriors already are defensively, it make them that much better when they are going off on one offensively and scoring so many points and putting pressure on you to basically score every time. That was one of the advantages Boston had in this series because they had the better overall team. When they could find ways of put together buckets, the opposing team Miami couldn't find ways to put together those buckets to follow unless Jimmy Butler was hot. Most of the time, Boston could go on these scoring runs and safely know nobody on Miami is really going to test this run that we're going on or match this run we're going on unless Jimmy's hot. Because if Jimmy ain't hot, mind you, Miami's offense just looks god-awful when Jimmy Butler is not on the floor. I just want to point that out. Or when Jimmy is not engaged, that offense for Miami is just god-awful. God-awful. And so, like, they had a play tonight for Miami where Vincent ran this basically pick and roll for Bam, and they got an easy alley-oop. And I'm like, yo, I haven't seen them run that play one time in this fucking series. Like, I haven't seen them run that one time. It's crazy. Like, Kyle Lowry is a great point guard, and he, to an extent, he is a good floor general. But I think Kyle Lowry is more so a defensive point guard and a energy guy than he is a floor general. Because if Chris Paul is getting Bam out of Bayou at least 18 easy points a night. Miami gonna have to reassess those guards in the offseason. Because they ain't getting it done. Or I don't think they can get done what you need to get back to the finals and win. Especially against these teams in the East. And then when you look at it, Miami just needed one of those guards that could settle the ship down, change the momentum of the game, get things going back the way they need to go. They don't have that on Miami. Miami need that, especially when you're playing against a team like Boston, who was playing equally as sloppy at times. But because they just had the better pure talent overall and the better defense, they was able to capitalize. Like I said, tonight was a huge difference in the fact that Marcus Smart decided, I'm not going to just bail out Miami with throwing up a bunch of bad three-pointers. I'm going to penetrate and kick it out. I'm going to drive and try to finish. I'm going to drive and hopefully get the call. That simple change from game 6 to 7 makes such a huge difference. You just didn't see those type of changes for Miami throughout this series, which is something that you will see from Golden State throughout the series against Boston. And I'm picking Golden State to win this series in 6. My soul wanted to say 5 based off of what I saw from Boston in this series, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And I'm going to say Warriors in 6. Steph Curry wins Finals MVP. And it'll be a tough series, because Boston do got a good defense, and they'll have times where they try to just put Steph Curry. They'll try to just put Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown in front of Steph Curry and say, go stop him. I don't think that's going to work, because that's not how Golden State plays. Golden State does not play a game in which Steph Curry is going to ISO the ball to death. He's not ISOing throughout the majority of a game to allow Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to just stand there and try to defend him one-on-one. He running off of screens, back cuts, and all other type of crazy movements. You're not going to just stand in front of Steph Curry and try to guard him. You'll have those moments and opportunities in the game here and there, but that's not how you're going to be able to defend the Warriors. That was basically how you got to defend Miami. That ain't happening with Golden State. Draymond Green is going to be able to run the actions off. How I keep about to say play action. All the different actions and motions that Golden State run is nowhere it's night and day from what you saw in Miami against Miami. So they're gonna have to put their track shoes on for one. So to me, naturally, because of how Golden State's offense is, that can stress out a good defender anyways. Because now those big dudes who you like to camp down in the lane, they got to move around now. They don't get to just jump out and defend a three-pointer here and there. They got to do that throughout the entirety of a game now. Golden State is not going to allow those dudes to just sit down in the paint. For one, Golden State not a team that's trying to drive on you all game. Yeah, they scored a lot of points in the paint against Dallas. It's because Dallas didn't have any rim protectors. This team has 2 rim protectors. They're not going to go into this series and say, okay, let's just test the rim protector. No, they finna get those boys moving around. They're going to make them dudes go out there and defend three-pointers. I've seen how they got to defend a Rudy Gobert. They're not finna let those dudes just stand in the paint and defend anything that come inside the paint. And while experience can matter, I think the biggest part of experience that'll work in the Golden State's favor, if the Celtics come into this series with the tendency to waste possessions like they did against Miami, that is going to kill them. Because yes, every team turned the ball over. But when you get past those turnovers, you start to have just these absolute wasted opportunities. If you do that because of lack of aggressiveness or just lack of understanding the moment, that's going to hurt you against Golden State, a team that's done won 3 championships and understands what it takes to win one. Like, you got to understand, this is a team that's done been there and won and lost in great fashion and in crushing fashion. They know what it takes to raise that Larry O'Brien. So Boston cannot have the wasted possessions that they had in this series. They can't have a lack of aggressiveness that they had throughout this series against Golden State, because Golden State is going to make you pay. The biggest thing that I'm looking forward to seeing in this series against Golden State and Boston. I'm trying to put Miami in that thing bad, boy. The biggest thing I'm looking for in this series, though, is probably, aside from my biasness, because Steph Curry, my favorite player, and I want him to go absolutely bonkers. But I do want to see how truly good Boston's defense is. Because, like I said, I just think this is going to be the ultimate test for Boston's defense. I'm not really too concerned about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, as crazy as that sounds. As much as I like both players, I do not think that those are 2 players that can absolutely just destroy Golden State. If anything, those 2 playing great will take this to 7 games if they play great throughout the entirety of this series. Because those 2 playing great will force Klay, Steph, and Dre to play great. However, if you get some of the games that they gave you, some of their best games in this series against Miami would not be good enough against Golden State. That's why I'm saying they have to come into this series with far more aggressiveness, consistent aggressiveness, consistent on not wasting, because you cannot just continuously rely on your defense. That's one. Because if you want to be honest, it's a lot of missed shots in that Miami series from Miami. A lot of dudes who just did not step up to the call. A lot of games of Bam Adebayo basically being not even a decoy, just being a wasted number out there. A wasted player on the court throughout a large part of this series. Early games where Kyle Lowry and those guards could not buy a shot, which is funny because Max Strus hit a huge shot tonight. But the point guards in this series and guards in this series just not being able to buy any type of buckets for the majority of this series. That's just not what you are going to face against Golden State. And I'm weighing the differences. I'm taking into account that it could be a lot of defended shots in this series against Golden State, but I'm taking into account how many shots did Miami get that was just straight up open shots that they just straight up missed. Because they had a lot of them tonight that they just straight up missed. Wide open shots that they missed. You cannot rely on just wide open misses in Golden State. And Golden State, to me, has not shot the ball as great as Golden State can shoot the ball in the playoffs yet. But they continuously find ways to not just get better, find ways to evolve this team, the defense, the offense, to continuously do what they have to do to continuously win these games. And I think this will be another series in which Golden State just finds a way to get four before Boston. I truly believe that. I don't think it's because of old experience and I like Curry. No. This Boston is a good team. Boston's inefficiency scoring at times will be a huge problem in this series, in my opinion, because this is not only is this the best scoring team, this is the best shooting team they are going to play. The three shooters on this team are better than every single shooter they got to face throughout this series, throughout any series they faced, aside from Kevin Durant. They won't play another, and even then, Kevin Durant not a better shooter than Klay Thompson, Steph Curry. So this will be a far different, and you didn't play a Draymond Green type of player in a game yet. So this will be a very different series for Boston. Now, Boston can rise to the occasion. I'm not saying Boston don't have a route to winning, but I have to pick a team to win, and I'm giving you all the reasons as to why I think the Golden State will win. At the same time, I'm basically telling you things that Boston can't do, and if they don't do this, and if they do this, those are things that can lead Boston to a victory. This is not a Golden State with Klay and Steph and KD in their primes. This ain't that. This can be a very competitive series. This can be a series in which if you play just great enough defense where Golden State do miss enough of the open shots to where you can take advantage of that and win these games in the end. That is a big part. That is a huge thing that can happen in this series. Because, yeah, you can't rely on missed shots. But what you can rely on is if your defense put their hand in faces and make it tough. Now, I already know one of the defense's plans for Boston will probably be to be physical with Curry. I mean, that's the game plan for every team, be aggressive and physical with the smaller, great player. But the overall defense, if you play great enough on these shooters and whatnot and get home on the shooters and whatnot, that could lead you to Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum play good. That could lead you to games where at the end of the game, you just need those two to be able to hit shots and be great to win games. I truly believe that those type things could lead Boston to a win. But I just don't think it's this year because of what I saw against Miami and in some of those games against the Bucks. I truly do believe that the Golden State Warriors are the better overall team. And I do think it'll be a couple games in this series where Boston finds it extremely tough to score. And the Warriors have so many, two dudes especially, who can go get their own shots, who not relying on dudes to get them shots. And the fact that Golden State's offense runs the way they run, if Boston have the struggles that they had in this series, it could get ugly. It could get ugly because what you have to rely on for Boston is that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are going to go out there and go nuts every game. That's what you're relying on. And I will never agree, even though that's cool, against the Warriors, it's tough to have to do that for 4 wins. for 4 wins, you got to go out there and go nuts every single one of those games to have a chance to beat the Warriors, because they can do it by committee and have one guy go for 40 plus and have 2 other dudes go for 20 plus. The Warriors have 3 dudes, and they done had in the playoffs different times where Steph, Clay, and Poole done basically giving you 30 each. And you still will have got other guys on the team that can go get you 15 plus. That is very tough to defend, even for some of the best defensive teams. And because I don't think the Warriors are the Warriors of old. See, the young Warriors, this would be a huge test for the young Warriors. But because I think this older version of the Warriors done kind of realized that, you know, we don't want to lose these games by not being able to hit threes. Like, if we can't hit 3-pointers and we continue to lose just because we can't hit threes, we don't want to be a team that's so relying on 3-pointers that if we can't hit them, we can't win. Which is why I appreciate the way they move the ball and whatnot for not open threes, but for open cuts to the basket, open twos, open threes, open looks that lead to open looks, to opener looks. I appreciate the offense for the Warriors basically progressing and transforming into that, because it was a time where the Warriors relied so heavily on the 3-pointer. If they didn't hit threes, they weren't winning, because none of the dudes on their team were good enough to get to the paint. So it was no purpose of having a offense that influenced cutting to the rim, because none of their dudes could get there, and none of the dudes was getting fouls when they did get there. Curry was too small. Clay couldn't put the ball on the floor. Draymond wasn't respected and couldn't score at the time. They didn't have an Andrew Wiggins. Because of how that offense, and I think that change really came after the Harrison Barnes finals loss, when they realized, bruh, we had to rely on a 3-pointer so much with a dude who could not shoot 3-pointers at the level of which we should have been giving him that many open 3-pointers, and it cost us, because somebody like Harrison Barnes, who should have been trying to go in and dunk anyways, was just missing everything. And I'm not blaming Harrison Barnes. I'm telling you that the offense, because it was set up for them to be able to hit threes, and it was really only threes that was killing everybody at that point in time, it killed them in the end at one point in time. It's not till they got Kevin Durant where I feel like they started to finally evolve that offense into something else. And because of the KD experience, they realized Andrew Wiggins can work with us, because we don't need him to become a 3-point shooter. It'd be nice if he get better at the 3-pointer and develop a consistent one, but that's not how we're going to use him as just a 3-point shooter. We now know that we need to be able to attack the basket. We now know we need to be able to have plays and cuts and screens and splits that lead to open looks in the paint. That's why you lead to how they that's how you get them outscoring Dallas the way they was able to outscore Dallas in the paint in that series. And I think against against Boston, this is going to be a completely different experience for Boston per se, because like I said, when you go up against a team like Miami, whose offense is Jimmy Butler or nothing, and everything have to basically go through Jimmy Butler. It's just different when you go up against a team like Golden State, who, you want to, protect against Curry. But, okay, now we got Klay. And nobody on Miami is a Klay Thompson, scoring-wise or shooting-wise. Nobody. So now Jason Tatum and the defense definitely got to stay home now. They can't have lapses now. Because now you have 3 dudes who can light you up. And because of how good the Warriors offense is, there's so many others that can fuck you up, that I just think this is going to be an exciting finals, man. I got the Golden State Warriors winning it in 6. We're going to obviously talk about it a lot leading up to Thursday's first game in San Francisco. Boy, it's going to be a good one. But I appreciate you for joining me. Congratulations to Jason Tatum and them boys. Fuck the Celtics. Cannot wait till the finals start. Tell somebody you fuck with them. Tell somebody you love them. Hey, we still trying to grow the channel, so share the shit too if you feel like it. If you don't, I ain't mad at you, but sign out.
Scared cause I'm drowning in silence with bad thoughts. These days I don't have nothing to say, man, the bag talks. I put in headphones on my driver. Pull Pull up to the spot and give a good dick and cadaver. I can't lie, I'm uninspired. No more pillow talking about nonsense. I only stick around to put some band-aids on my conscience. I don't know why I feel so bad, nigga. That's what we do. No foundation. We don't build no more. We just screw. Half a bottle of Henny, girl, I'm going with the wind. The same niggas say they happy for me, ain't want me to win. So I'm done on my friends. Don't need help popping Coronas and reminiscing. I just call up Big Bro J and say it's time for venting. If I live forever, I hold this hate for some centuries. You don't know how much of how you doing what it meant to me, but motherfuck all that. I don't even offer up the time to make the call back. Stupid Lodo.